The tagline for this particular WCW pay-per-view was, a little bit of drum roll please, boom! Hell hath no fury like First Fight 98. Who do you trust? That is an actual tagline that the WCW marketing brass said, you know what, we're at our hottest, we're just rolling off a Starrcade 1997 where we suckered a whole bunch of goddamn people to watch Sting and Hogan have a goddamn clash where Hogan uses creative control to basically butcher the whole goddamn thing, and then we held the title up right after that, and now we're going to sucker more people in to watch a card that actually on paper isn't all that bad, and we're going to address this world title controversy, and we're going to come up with a tagline like that. If that's a tagline they settled on, I would hate to see what the rejected ideas were. I mean, that's 3 separate thoughts. Human Centipede together well before the Human Centipede trilogy was ever thought of. Man, some ideas were definitely Human Centipede together. None of them good. All full of shit. Like the Human Centipede trilogy. Enough about the Human Centipede trilogy. I wonder how they settled on the tagline. Were they just consuming copious amounts of alcoholic beverages? Beer, wine, Everclear, was everything wonderful now? Na 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 na. I'm not saying the right beat, but everything is wonderful now. That song come out in 98 because Everclear actually used to be a thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Nevertheless, maybe they were taking a whole bunch of drugs. I mean, that'll play into a couple things that happened on this pay-per-view, a little bit afterwards especially. Maybe they sustained several major head injuries, like they dived onto a chair on a guy, and I can't imagine why that particular guy decided to snap and end his family's life and his own life about 7.5 years later. Maybe, just maybe, the people on the WCW marketing team were the end result of 3 generations of inbreeding. I don't think I'm going to get the answers to any of these particular questions, but leave your answers in the comments. Nevertheless, I'm John Renton with the Retro Review of WCW NWO Sold Out 1998. Nearly 25 years after the fact, and look, WCW, it's a miracle that they managed to actually beat WWF for almost 2 years straight in the television ratings. And we're even doing well from the debut of Nitro. They were gaining attention as far as all that history, all that stuff talked about in other reviews. And WCW had a lot of great talent. This pay-per-view, however, is proof that a lot of stuff came out of nowhere. There was a heel turn for no goddamn reason. There was a bunch of bullshit. The stuff with the NWO, they should have had that end when Sting should have cleanly beaten Hogan at Starrcade 97. But he didn't. You can check out my retro review of that. Good God, WCW, it's no wonder that they would start losing the ratings war here like about 10 weeks after this. And even though they would counterpunch each other for a while, it was clearly obvious that yes, you had the AOL Time Warner influence, or the merger was going to come up in about 2 years. And you had a whole bunch of other stuff going on behind the scenes. But WCW was eroding rapidly at this point. By the time we got past Spring Stampede 1999, they didn't have shit left. Anyway, they were in Dayton, Ohio. About 5,500 fans sold slap dab out. That is a serious downturn as far as attendance. But to be fair, smaller venue, because they were at the MCI Center for Starrcade 1997. 17,500 fans, not 23, 24,000 like they had commentary say. But that had a pretty serious amount of pay-per-view buys. Like, I think it was either the most bought or the second or third most bought pay-per-view in WCW history. But then the following month at Super Brawl 8, the Cow Palace, they did, close to 13,000 people, which is pretty close to a sellout in the Cow Palace. Yeah, this event. Yeah, I kind of went a little bit long on that intro and everything because honestly, a lot of the matches aren't really worth discussing. Like, there are some that aren't bad, but there's one particular thing, there's one segment that ate up like 15 minutes of pay-per-view time. They could have been saved for Nitro. Anyway, yeah, that tagline. That tagline is going to ring in my head forever, even though it makes no sense. They do a package on the Giant and Kevin Nash. It was supposed to have been Starrcade 97. Nash wasn't able to be there. I don't remember why Nash wasn't able to be there. I don't remember if it was storyline or if he had a legit injury or a medical issue. Because I know that was around the time that he lost his mother, but he lost his mother in 94. So maybe he was mourning. I'm not sure. If somebody can point to a clip where Kevin Nash addressed why he wasn't there, I'd love to know it. because I like to hear it from the man himself. So it was a high package. There was a $1.5 million bond placed where Giant can't touch Nash, but Nash has to show up. And then I guess they fight over the money. Very convoluted television. WCW Thunder had just debuted a couple weeks prior. And then we had the smoke machine going off again because Frank, the eternal, immortal Frank that he is, that's worked everywhere and can't remember how to turn off a smoke machine. Frank, you had one job. If you are a longtime viewer and a regular viewer, you will get the joke. If not, this is deeply confusing to you. Frank's just a man that I decided to make up because Frank the Fogman. Why the hell not? So, Heenan, Schiavone, and Dusty lead us off. Dusty talks about tradition, they talk about the card and everything. Tenay joins commentary for the cruiserweight matches, such as Juventud Guerrero, Super Callo, Frigilist Gatsby Alidocious, and then Lismar Jr. along with Chavo Jr. versus La Parca, Psychosis, Silver King, and El Dandy. I never wanted to doubt El Dandy being in this because who am I to doubt El Dandy? Had to work that in. Also, you may notice the sponsor of this particular pay-per-view is, all on the ring mats or whatever, because WCW NWO Sold Out is sponsored by Snickers. No, Hulk, Snickers. I said Snickers. Get away. God damn it, Hulk. Not again. Well, let's just make another donation to the NAACP. No, Hulk. He's never going to escape that, nor should he. I mean, this is the usual fare. There was Lucha Tag rules, so nobody really did anything except just jump around, do all their stuff, and lay shit in, and everybody dived, and then the Tornado DDT wins it. After about 15 other moves that could have ended the match, a Tornado DDT wins it. Chavo Jr. got the win on a WCW pay-per-view. I'm just going to blame him for the fall of the company. I kid. Chavo was fine. He just was never above a mid-card act. So, La Parca then lays out everybody with a chair. Everybody. He even lays out his tag partners with a chair. Why? Because he's La Parca. He's a chairman. I don't know. He doesn't know. He just got up and did the dance and everything and did all that, and I can't do the La Parca dance. Can't do that. Don't gift that. Do not gift that because it's terrible. It's a desecration of La Parca's image. Anyway, they had an internet-type pay-per-view, Boston Brawl, on January 31st, 1998. If anybody knows that the Boston Brawl actually exists, the WCW Boston Brawl exists on YouTube, please send me an actual working link and a safe link, and I will actually review that at some point, because why not? So anyway, Raven must face Chris Benoit after having Perry Saturn face off against Chris Benoit at Starrcade. Raven must wrestle and the flock is banned, and then he says, Benoit, I don't fear your pain, I feast on it. Nancy should have, nope. Daniel, nope. Moving on. Raven versus Benoit, Raven's rules match. Don't give Benoit a chance to start going. God, Heenan, you should have been there to give the... Nope. It's a Benoit match. I can't watch... Benoit's matches are uncomfortable to watch. Hearing the commentary, just some of the stuff... Yes, technically impressive. Rabid Wolverine, all that. He lays his shit in. It's uncomfortable to watch. Eventually, he does a diving headbutt on, while Raven has a chair on him. Gee, I wonder why he had brain trauma. Crossface wins it. Raven passes out. Then the flock runs down. Well, Kidman runs down. Then he gets locked in the cloverleaf because Malenko runs down to help Benoit. And then other flock members come, and it just gets really weird. So, Jericho took on Ray in a WCW Cruiserweight title match. This was more of an angle match because Ray had suffered a knee injury and needed to be written off to get his only knee surgery. He never had 5 surgeries in his left knee. How the hell could anybody say that? They never did a PSA in WWE. Why would anyone think that? So yeah, Jericho basically just ended up beating him. I mean, Ray did some stuff, but it was more of an angle match. It was like half of the length it could have been if Ray was ambulatory. And also, I mean, he did some stuff, but they had to work it to where they did a Rana attempt, Lion Tamer, and there you go. And Jericho won. He says, "Don't you boo me! Don't you boo me! Okay, you want me to give you a reason to boo?" He just kicks his knee, kicks Jericho's knee. He kicks his own knee. No, he kicks Jericho kicks Ray's knee. He doesn't kick his own knee. And then takes an equipment case and bashes it into Ray's knee. There you go. So far, it's fine. This is a fine pay-per-view. And then it screeches to a halt. Mean Gene is interviewing James J. Dillon. What's the state of the world title picture? Okay, here's the timeline. They built up the whole Hogan Sting thing for 15 months. Hogan lost to Luger briefly on the Nitro going into Road Wild 97. Luger won that and then lost it there. So, okay, instead of Hogan having it for goddamn... I mean, it was a great, cool pop, don't get me wrong, but they really should have had Hogan just hold the goddamn thing for a while. You know, for, like, that whole thing. I mean, even though it was great, in hindsight, it kind of undercut stuff that Sting did. And don't worry, they undercut Sting plenty. After that, Piper was the interim commissioner. Piper comes out. If Piper wasn't drunk, he was not well. He did not sound good. He sounded lost. I think that's why this thing took forever. This was about 12 to 15 minutes of pay-per-view broadcast. Which is probably why some of the matches maybe had to be rushed, like the main event. Sting's here, Hogan's here, Hall's here, because Hall won World War III, that Battle Royal, back in November of 97, which was just a couple months prior, and he had a guaranteed world title shot, but they had Sting and Hogan, and now Hall's going to get a shot eventually, maybe, kind of. Bischoff's there too. This went way too long. Piper and Hogan were going back and forth. Sting felt like an afterthought. They built Sting up like the goddamn savior of WCW, and he felt like just another guy by this point. Yeah, they popped for the stuff he did, and it was almost subdued. And this took forever. This was shit, is what I wrote down. Because, yeah, there's star power, but it was shit. This could have been saved for Nitro. Scott Hall eventually looks and says, you know what, I'm out. I'm just going to go. I'm going to stop, not do this anymore. And Super Brawl 8 is going to be the place where the final clash will happen, and Sting will beat Hogan. Even though it's supposed to happen in Starrcade 97, the NWO should have been disbanded. And Sting could have had a lengthy run and faced Scott Hall at Uncensored 98, which he did, and then he lost, and then Hall lost, that is, and then Sting lost to Savage, but Savage had really damaged his knee, and then Savage needed to be written off, so Hogan won it the next day. Yeah, that's what they did. They held it, they'd spent 12 to 15 minutes saying, yeah, the world title thing is not being addressed here. It's going to be addressed as Super Brawl 8. They wasted pay-per-view time for this. At this point, I was starting to think that and even watching this, I was watching this at buddy's house at the time, and I was thinking that WCW really was starting to shit the bed because they were getting overconfident. Rick Martel took on Booker T in the TV title match. Rick Martel having a shocking return to WCW, or a shocking, run in WCW. It didn't last very long, unfortunately. He suffered a knee injury at the following Super Brawl that necessitated, he was a TV champion. He was going to retain it and go on a bit of a run. Unfortunately, he suffered a knee injury that would knock him out of that. They came up with something where Booker won and then faced Saturn a little bit later. And Martel would have a couple more appearances. He would suffer another knee injury or another injury in July or August of 98. He would do French broadcast stuff for their, French broadcasts, obviously, not their Portuguese broadcast, because I don't think they speak French in Portugal. Maybe they do. I don't know enough about that. He would then wrestle a couple more times. I think he had one more match in I think a Hawaiian Federation or something like that, and that was it. And Rick Martel ever since then has made some appearances, but he hasn't wrestled. I like Rick Martel. It was a very odd run. It was just very odd. He felt very out of place. And that's not to say that Rick's work wasn't good. He was 40. He was still good. It was just weird. He's 40 or he's almost 40. Somewhere around. No, he was 40. He maybe could have had another year run. I don't know if he would have been around that much longer. Apparently him and Don Callis were supposed to come back as a team. Don Callis was going to wrestle. Dear God to help us all. Oh, dear God. Don Callis trying to be in the ring when he's terrible on commentary. I've gone off on too much of a tangent here. The match is fine. Rick Martel's still a good worker by this point before the aforementioned injury, Super Brawl 8. And the Harlem Hangover 1, 2, 3. Martel kind of looks a little upset, shakes his hand, and then there you go. And then Martel's in the ring dejected. Saturn comes down and attacks, and then Booker runs him off. And that would necessitate Martel Booker at Super Brawl 8, and then Booker Saturn after Martel got injured. And then we get Scott Hall with Louis Spicolli versus Larry Zbyszko. And who's in Larry Zbyszko's corner? Dusty Rhodes, who left the commentary position, if you will. Now, Louis Spicolli would actually he was supposed to face Larry Zbyszko on the following Super Brawl because of the events that took place here. Sadly, Louis Piccoli would die 3 weeks after this event. 5 days after his 27th birthday. He OD'd. Not sure on what. I mean, Rad Radford, by the way, for the new generation WWF fans, that's probably where most, I don't want to say diehard fans, but most fans, are old like me. If you're like me, and I know I am, then you may remember him as Rad Radford. That and Larry got a lot of pyro for some reason. Larry is pretty much one of the most over guys on the roster by this point. He was mostly a commentator. I mean, he did some work. Faced off against Eric Bischoff in a match at Starrcade '97 that certainly happened in a wrestling ring. Larry is way over. This is more of an angle than a match. The crowd was up for this. And a little bit later, we get a ref bump. Larry, plays possum, he gets Hall in a choke. Louis Piccoli tries to interfere. Dusty hits him with an elbow. And then inadvertently hits Larry with an elbow. And then takes off the shirt. And Dusty Rhodes has joined the NWO. Why? For who? I don't know. And then drops a few elbows. And people popped, but then people were very confused. They're like, why? Why'd this happen? What? Why'd this happen? Apparently, Dusty would actually be in the corner of Hall and Nash until, I think, late November of '98. And he'd revert back to being the American Dream. It made no sense. It was so fucking stupid. Just to pop the NWO can get to anybody. The NWO already by this point was feeling like it was dragging down the show. That's not good. Speaking of not good, Conan, Scott Norton, Buff Bagwell with Vincent against the Steiners, Ray Traylor, and with Ted DiBiase. Schiavone basically took a break because he was so dejected by Dusty turning. And I like Schiavone. I'm not knocking Schiavone. It was just very weirdly done. Tenay joins commentary. Then Schiavone joins again, but he kind of rips into Dusty. This is more about Scott Steiner just being, being a lot angrier. He would actually turn on Rick a month later at Super Brawl 8. There's Super Brawl 8 again. And he hits a Steiner screwdriver on Conan 1, 2, 3. There you go. Now we get to Nash versus Giant. The showdown of the big lads. Man, it was very, very awkward. Still, this is probably the best you could get out of these guys. Nash even did an attempt at a dive over the top. Giant caught him, and that's strength you can't teach. He caught a 300-something pound man and said no. Put him in the post. Because that probably would have hurt Nash. Nash probably would have tore everything if Giant hadn't caught him. If, they had tried to go to the floor, Nash probably would have hurt himself even more. Giant caught him, posted him. They did more big man stuff like a big boot spot where they knocked each other down. And then Bischoff tries to interfere. Bischoff gets chokeslammed. I mean, over the ropes. Boom. And then Hogan hands Nash a coffee pot and he throws it in Giant's face. And then he does a jackknife attempt on Giant. This is the infamous one where he drops him right on his goddamn head. Because either Nash tore a bunch of muscles, hurt his back or something, or Giant didn't post up enough, or maybe Giant or Nash, as strong as he is, maybe realized, shit, I shouldn't have done that. Fortunately, Giant wasn't actually hurt, but they did a neck injury angle with him afterwards. The EMTs were checking on him, but nope, we got to go to a Super Brawl 8 plug because we are way over time at this point. Fortunately, the next match will not go way over time. Flair versus Bret Hart. Well, they have to do their own stuff, and they are just insufferably good at what they do, especially at this point. So let's let them go out and wrestle for nearly 20 minutes. And that's good. That's fine for what it is. They totally botched Bret Hart's WCW run from the word go. I talked about it. I will continue to say, you pay the guy nearly $3 million goddamn dollars a year, and you don't bring him out the next night after Survivor Series 97 and say, Bret, 10 minutes, say something. And it would have gotten 10 to 12 million people. Everybody that was pissed off at Vince would have turned over. It would have been great. They would have done their biggest goddamn rating to that point. Bret and Rick crafted a good match, focusing on body parts, as you would expect. And Flair kept going for the figure four. Flair would get the figure four, but Bret would, would counter. Flair would counter Bret's stuff. They, crafted a really good match here, and the sharpshooter eventually won it. Bret Hart should have been in the world title mix right after this. If they had known what the hell they were doing, but they didn't, there you go. And I have nothing against Bischoff in particular, but him saying that, oh, Bret, had no fire, no nothing, well, maybe he'd given him a reason to actually have some goddamn fire coming in. Whatever. Speaking of stuff that didn't have much going in, Luger versus Savage with Liz. Liz attacked Luger. That is the only time they would ever interact in their life. Right, Luger helped facilitate or kind of push Liz along there. I'm not saying Liz wasn't responsible as an adult. Let's not act like Luger was necessarily a freaking saint. You got the stuff with the 911 call. Don't fucking tell me he couldn't have tried to save her. Anyway, there was a jump start. It was a 7-minute main event. And Savage eventually looked like he was going to get the victory. Scott Hall comes down with a chair. Hogan stops him. Scott Hall gets powered out. And then, or knocked off the ring. And we get the torture rack and Savage gives up. And then Luger gets attacked by Hogan. The NWO runs down. Here's Sting! Then we get a double submission spot. It ends like a Nitro. I love WCW at its best, but this pay-per-view is aged like milk. Fuck. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Wetland. I'll see you soon.